My name is James Tuvak, and I've served as an officer with the Navajo Tribal Police for 11 years, stationed in Nome, Alaska. If you're watching this from anywhere in the lower 48, you probably think Nome is just that place from the reality shows. Gold miners, crab fishermen, people trying to get rich quick in America's last frontier. But there's something else here. Something we don't talk about on camera, something the Discovery Channel will never document. The aurora borealis comes from above. Everyone knows that. Solar particles hitting our magnetosphere, creating those dancing green curtains across the Arctic sky. Beautiful, natural, explainable. But the lights we see near Nome, the ones we call the second sun, they come from below. And during aurora season, when both lights appear at the same time, people disappear. 3 to 4 every season, like clockwork. Always the same way. They walk toward the underground lights and never come back. Well, that's not entirely true. Sometimes they come back, but when they do, they're not the same. And some of them come back decades after they disappeared, looking exactly the same age as when they left. October 15th, 2024, 3:47 p.m. The sun was already setting. By December, we'd have only 4 hours of daylight. I was responding to a routine call about a disturbance at the old Gold Rush tunnel entrance on the outskirts of town. Kids were always messing around there, trying to find forgotten gold claims, urban exploring, that kind of thing. What I found changed everything I thought I knew about my hometown. The tunnel entrance was one of hundreds that riddled the ground beneath Nome. The 1900 gold rush had brought 20,000 people to a beach that could barely support 200. They dug everywhere, following veins of gold that seemed to lead deeper and deeper into the permafrost. Most of the tunnels had collapsed or been sealed, but this one, Tunnel 47, according to the old mining maps, was still partially accessible. I found the kids first. 3 teenagers from the high school standing at the tunnel entrance, but something was wrong. They weren't moving, not frozen, not scared, just standing, staring into the darkness of the tunnel with expressions of rapture on their faces. "Hey!" I called out. "David! Jennifer! David! Step back from there!" They didn't respond, didn't even acknowledge I was there. As I got closer, I could see their eyes reflecting something. A golden light that wasn't coming from my flashlight or the setting sun. It was coming from deep within the tunnel. I grabbed David by the shoulder, and that's when I felt it. He was warm. Too warm. In minus 20 degrees Fahrenheit weather, wearing just a light jacket, his skin felt like he had a fever of 105. But he wasn't sweating, wasn't shivering. He was just standing there, smiling at something I couldn't see. I radioed for backup and medical, then did something I probably shouldn't have. I looked into the tunnel myself. At first, it was just darkness. The beam of my flashlight penetrated maybe 30 feet before being swallowed by the black. But then, as my eyes adjusted, I saw it. A light deep in the tunnel, pulsing with a rhythm that matched my heartbeat. It wasn't fire, wasn't electric. It was something else, something that hurt to look at directly but was beautiful in my peripheral vision. And I heard it calling, not with words, but with something deeper. It promised warmth in the Arctic cold, gold beyond imagination, and time. So much time. All I had to do was walk forward, follow the light down into the warm embrace of the second sun. I almost did. God help me. I took 3 steps into that tunnel before my radio crackled to life, breaking the spell. "Unit 7, this is dispatch. Medical en route. What's your status?" The kids snapped out of it the moment I responded to dispatch. They looked confused, disoriented. David checked his phone and went pale. "Officer Tuvok," he said, his voice shaking. "We've been standing here for 6 hours. It felt like maybe 5 minutes." 6 hours. The call had come in at 10 a.m. Somehow, I'd lost 3 hours just driving here, and another 3 standing at the tunnel entrance. Time distortion. It was one of the signs the elders warned about, one of the ways you knew the second son was active. I got the kids to the hospital, where Dr. Kaylee Auden ran every test she could think of. Physically, they were fine, except for elevated body temperatures and radiation levels that shouldn't exist. Not harmful levels, but detectable. Like they'd been exposed to a radiation source that didn't match any known isotope. "James," Dr. Auden pulled me aside, "I've seen this before. Every aurora season, we get a few cases. People exposed to the lights, most recover, but some what?" She looked around nervously, then whispered, "Some disappear from their hospital beds. Security footage shows them walking out, but they never make it to the exits. They just vanish somewhere in the building. And James, I've been keeping track. This has been happening since the hospital was built in 1954. That night, I went home and did something I should have done years ago. I opened my grandfather's journals. Uyakuk Tuovak had been one of the few Inupiat to work with the gold miners in the early 1900s. He'd lived to be 103, sharp until the end, and he'd never let anyone digitize his writings. "Some things," he'd said, "need to stay in ink and paper. Electrons can be changed. Ink remembers true." His first entry about the second son was dated September 15th, 1901. "The white men dig too deep. They follow the gold, but the gold leads them to the kimik, the light that burns cold. The shamans knew to avoid it. They knew it was a door. But the miners are greedy, and greed makes men foolish. Today, 7 men entered Tunnel 12. They came back speaking languages that don't exist, their eyes reflecting stars from skies we've never seen. We had to seal the tunnel. We had to seal them inside. May the spirits forgive us." Tunnel 12. I pulled up the old mining surveys on my computer. Tunnel 12 had been one of the most productive claims, pulling out nearly $2 million in gold, in $1,900, before it was abruptly abandoned in October 1901. The official record said it was due to unstable geological conditions. But my grandfather's journal told a different story. October 3rd, 1901. The sealed miners are singing. We can hear them through 30 feet of rock and permafrost. They sing in harmony with the aurora above and the chimik below. Tonight, Anyu's daughter walked to the tunnel entrance. We found her trying to dig through the seal with her bare hands, her fingers worn to bone, still smiling. She said the miners promised to show her the city beneath, the city where the second sun never sets. I looked up from the journal. Outside my window, the aurora borealis was beginning its dance across the sky, green curtains shimmering against the stars. But there was something else, a golden glow emanating from the ground near the old mining district. The second sun was rising. My phone rang. It was dispatch. "James, we've got a situation. There's a group of people walking toward the old mining district, maybe 20, 30 individuals. They're not responding to calls, and, James, some of them are wearing clothing from different eras. One officer swears he saw his grandmother, but she died in 1987. I grabbed my gear and headed out, my grandfather's journal still on my desk, open to an entry I hadn't gotten to yet. If I'd read just one more page, I would have known what was coming. I would have known why the elders instituted the rule about never patrolling during aurora season when both lights were visible. Because that's when the doors open. All of them. All 300 miles of tunnels beneath Nome become pathways to somewhere else. And sometimes what comes through isn't human. And sometimes what was human chooses not to be anymore. As I drove toward the mining district, I saw them. The walking figures dispatch had reported. They moved in perfect synchronization, their footsteps matching the pulse of the golden light emanating from the ground. Among them, I recognized faces from missing person reports going back decades. Robert Koenig, disappeared 1978, still wearing his disco-era clothes. Mary Tooley, vanished in 1995, unchanged despite nearly 30 years. And leading them, dressed in a miner's outfit from the 1900s, was someone I recognized from old photographs. It was Jeremiah Walsh, one of the 7 miners my grandfather had helped seal in Tunnel 12 in 1901. He looked exactly as he had in the pictures, late 30s, thick beard, intense eyes. But those eyes now reflected stars from skies that didn't exist in our reality. He looked directly at me as I stepped out of my vehicle, and he smiled. "Officer Tuvok," he said, his voice carrying despite the distance. "Your grandfather was wise to seal us away, but the seal weakens with each aurora season. And this year, during the perfect alignment, all seals will break. The city beneath will rise. The second sun will replace the first. And Nome will become the gateway between what was and what will be." Before I could respond, before I could even process what I was seeing, they all turned as one and walked into the side of a hill. Not into a tunnel or a cave, into solid rock. They passed through it like it was water, disappearing one by one, leaving only footprints in the frost that glowed with the same golden light as the second sun. I stood there, alone in the Arctic night, watching the aurora above and the golden glow below, and I understood why we never patrol during aurora season. It's not to protect us from what we might see. It's to protect us from the choice we might have to make, because everyone who sees both lights at once hears the same offer. Stay in the cold, harsh world above, or descend to the warm, golden city below where time means nothing, and death is just a word. And the terrifying part? The more I stood there, the more reasonable the second option seemed. I forced myself back to my vehicle, back to the station. I had to read the rest of my grandfather's journal. I had to understand what was coming. Because if Jeremiah Walsh was right, if the seals were breaking, then Nome was about to become ground zero for something that would make the gold rush look like a minor historical footnote. The second sun was rising, and with it, questions that Nome had been built to never answer. Questions like, what if the gold the miners found wasn't naturally occurring? What if it was bait, placed there deliberately to make humans dig deeper? And what if the real treasure wasn't the gold at all, but the miners themselves, transformed, preserved, and recruited for a purpose we couldn't begin to understand? I had 11 days until the perfect alignment Walsh mentioned. 11 days to figure out what was happening beneath Nome. 11 days to decide whether to warn everyone to evacuate, or to accept that maybe, just maybe, what was coming wasn't an invasion, but an invitation. The problem was, the more I learned, the less sure I became about which outcome would be better for humanity. The next morning, October 16th, I called an emergency meeting with the tribal council. The 5 elders who governed our community gathered in the community center, a modern building built on ancient ground. Elder Martha Kiutaluk arrived first, her weathered face grave. She was 93, the oldest living Inupiat in Nome, and the only one who remembered the last perfect alignment. "You've seen them," she said. It wasn't a question. "The ones who walk between. Your grandfather tried to warn us this day would come." The other elders filed in. Thomas Ayatunguk, Margaret Olana, Samuel Kakuna, and young Elder Joseph Saklamana, only 65 and considered the radical of the group for suggesting we should embrace modern technology to document our traditions. I showed them the photos I'd taken of the footprints, the readings from my equipment showing the radiation signatures, and, finally, my grandfather's journal. Martha held the journal like it was made of gold and sorrow. "Uyakuk was my cousin," she said. "He told me things before he died. Things he didn't write down. The tunnels weren't dug by the miners, James. They were already there, the miners just found them and followed them down." "What do you mean they were already there?" I asked. Thomas cleared his throat. "The stories go back before the Russians, before any written history. Our people knew about the warm places beneath the ice. During the worst winters, when starvation threatened, sometimes people would go down to the warm places. They'd come back with food, with strange fish that glowed, with water that never froze. But they'd also come back different." "Different how?" "They stopped aging," Margaret said quietly. "They could hear thoughts. They knew when storms were coming months in advance. And they all talked about the city, the beautiful city where the second sun never sets and nobody ever dies." "But they all eventually went back," Samuel added. "Every single one. They'd live among us for years, sometimes decades. Then one aurora season, they'd walk back to the tunnels and never return." Joseph pulled out his tablet, earning disapproving looks from the other elders, and showed me something that made my blood run cold. Satellite thermal imaging of Nome from NASA, publicly available but rarely examined. During aurora season, the entire underground area beneath Nome glowed with heat signatures, but not random heat. Organized patterns. Streets, buildings. A complete infrastructure existing beneath the permafrost. "This has been visible on satellite for decades," Joseph said. "The government knows. They've always known. Why do you think Nome has never been allowed to expand its mining operations despite the gold reserves? Why do you think the EPA shuts down any deep drilling projects?" Before I could respond, my radio crackled. It was Dr. Otten from the hospital. "James, you need to get here now. The 3 kids from yesterday, they're changing." I raced to the hospital, the elders insisting on coming with me. What we found in the isolation ward defied medical explanation. David, Jennifer, and David were lying in their beds, conscious but transformed. Their skin had taken on a subtle golden hue, and their eyes reflected light like a cat's. But strangest of all, they were speaking in perfect synchronization, in a language that sounded like harmonized mathematical equations. Dr. Otten pulled up their brain scans. "Look at this. Their neural activity is off the charts, but it's perfectly synchronized. 3 separate brains functioning as one consciousness. And James, their DNA is changing. They're developing new base pairs that shouldn't exist in terrestrial biology." Martha approached the children slowly, listening to their strange speech. Suddenly, her eyes widened. "It's not a language," she said. "It's coordinates. They're reciting coordinates and times. Locations all around Nome and—" She paused, calculating. "Dates, future dates, all within the next 10 days. Joseph was already entering the coordinates into his tablet. "These are all tunnel entrances. Every single abandoned mine shaft and sealed tunnel in Nome. They're marking them." The children suddenly stopped speaking and turned to look at us. When they spoke, it was in English but still in that unnerving perfect unison. "The invitation has been extended. The city below welcomes all who wish to escape the dying world above. In 10 days, when the solar maximum aligns with the magnetic poles, the barriers dissolve. Those who descend will evolve. Those who remain will face the long darkness alone. Then they closed their eyes and fell into what looked like peaceful sleep. Their vital signs remained stable, but the golden hue to their skin grew more pronounced. I needed more information. That afternoon, I did something I'd been avoiding for years. I visited my father. Mikhail Tovak lived in a care facility on the outskirts of Nome, not because he was old or sick, but because he'd gone into the tunnels in 1997 and come back touched, as the elders called it. The facility was quiet when I arrived. I found my father in his room, standing at the window, staring at the ground. He didn't turn when I entered, but he spoke. "Hello, James. I've been expecting you. The harmonics told me you'd come today." He still looked 45, the age he'd been when he'd disappeared for 3 days during the Aurora season of 1997. I was now older than my own father, at least in appearance. "Dad, I need to know what's down there. What's really happening." He turned, and his eyes held depths that seemed infinite. "Sit, son. Let me tell you about the year 2897. "What?" "That's when they're from, James. The builders of the city. Humans, but from a future where the sun has begun to die. They traveled not through space but through time, down through the quantum tunnels that exist in places where reality is thin. They built their city in the past, in our present, to escape their dying future. My head spun. That's impossible. Is it? You've seen the technology in those tunnels. Lights that burn without fuel, preservation that stops entropy, time distortion that turns hours into minutes. They brought their technology back, but more importantly, they brought their knowledge. The gold was just bait, James. They needed us to find them, to dig down to where they waited. Why? Because they can't survive in our time without us. They need genetic material from this era to anchor themselves. Every person who goes down and comes back is partially merged with one of them. We become their lifeboats in the stream of time. And the perfect alignment? His expression grew sad. That's when the temporal barriers are weakest. When past, present, and future converge. They're offering humanity a choice. Stay in this timeline and face the challenges ahead, or join them in their eternal city where death has been conquered but humanity as we know it ends. What did you choose, Dad? He smiled sadly. I'm still here, aren't I? But only partially. Part of me is always there, in the city, living another life. Every person who's been exposed exists in superposition, both here and there, then and now, and in 10 days, everyone in Nome will have to make that choice. That night, I returned to my grandfather's journal and read the entries I'd missed. October 31st, 1950. He'd lived longer than I'd thought. The alignment comes again. I'm too old to resist this time. The city calls, and I can see it even with my eyes closed. Golden streets that hum with life, buildings that grow like living things, and in the center, the second sun, a captured star that burns backward through time. The people there are happy, but they are no longer entirely human. They are something new, something that has traded mortality for a different kind of existence. To my descendants who read this, the choice is coming. It comes for every generation. Some years only a few are called, but there are special years, perfect alignments, when everyone must choose. 2024 is such a year, the final year perhaps. After this, the door either closes forever or opens completely. I have seen both futures. In one, humanity struggles on, faces climate change, wars, diseases, but remains human. In the other, we evolve, become eternal, but lose something essential, the ability to truly die, to truly live, to truly change. I do not know which future is better. I only know that the choice must be made with open eyes. The journal ended there, but tucked into the back cover was a map, hand-drawn, showing every tunnel entrance in Nome, and, more importantly, showing the central chamber, the place where the second sun burned beneath the permafrost. I studied the map until my eyes burned. The central chamber was directly beneath the Nome Elementary School. Of course, the one place in town that had been built with the deepest foundation, officially to provide stability in permafrost conditions. But now I understood the real reason, to seal off the main entrance to the city below. My phone rang. It was Joseph Saclamana. "James, you need to see the news. It's not just Nome." I turned on my computer and watched in disbelief. Reports were coming in from around the Arctic Circle. Barrow, Kotzebue, even cities in Russia, Norway, and Canada. Golden lights emanating from the ground. People disappearing into hillsides. The same phenomena, all during this specific aurora season. A video from Svalbard, Norway, showed an entire research station's worth of scientists walking in formation into a glacier. Another from Siberia showed children drawing the same symbols the teenagers had been speaking. Coordinates and dates, all pointing to the same moment. October 26, 2024, 11:47 p.m. Alaska Standard Time. The perfect alignment wasn't just about Nome, it was global. Every place where the permafrost ran deep, where the aurora danced, where reality was thin enough for time to fold back on itself. I called an emergency meeting with the mayor, the city council, and the state authorities. The room was packed, the tension thick enough to cut. Mayor Richard Benneville, a transplant from California who'd come for the Gold Rush revival, was pale and shaking. "We need to evacuate the town," he said. "Call in the National Guard. Seal the tunnels." Martha Kiyuteluk stood up, her voice carrying the authority of ages. "You cannot seal what has already been opened. You cannot fight the future reaching back to save itself. All you can do is choose. Face the unknown above, or embrace the known below." "You're talking about mass delusion," the mayor sputtered. "Hallucinations caused by gas leaks or radiation." I pulled up the satellite imagery Joseph had shown me. "This is real-time thermal imaging. That's not a gas leak, that's a city. A functioning city beneath Nome with an estimated population of something." The room erupted in arguments. Scientists demanded investigations. Religious leaders called for prayer. The military representative, who had appeared seemingly from nowhere, insisted on containment protocols. But through it all, I kept thinking about the children in the hospital, about my father existing in 2 times at once, about Jeremiah Walsh walking through solid rock. Whatever was happening, it was beyond our ability to stop. We could only decide how to respond. As the meeting devolved into chaos, my radio crackled. It was Dr. Otten again. "James, the children are gone. The security footage shows them walking out, but they walked through the walls. And James, there are more people arriving at the hospital, dozens, all showing the same symptoms. Golden skin, synchronized speech, talking about the invitation." I left the meeting and drove to the hospital. The parking lot was full of people standing in perfect formation, all facing the same direction, toward the elementary school, toward the sealed entrance to the central chamber. They were all ages, all backgrounds, but they moved as one organism. Among them, I saw my father. He looked at me with those infinite eyes and spoke, not with his voice alone, but with the harmony of hundreds. 3 days, James. In 3 days, the seal breaks. The second sun rises fully, and everyone in Nome will see the city as it truly is. Then you'll understand why we chose to go, why we chose to stay, why we exist in both states waiting for this moment. As if on cue, the ground beneath Nome began to hum, a deep vibration that you felt in your bones. Windows rattled, car alarms went off, and in the distance the aurora borealis began to dance, brighter than anyone had ever seen it. But beneath it, the golden glow was spreading, seeping up through every crack, every basement, every foundation. The second sun was rising, and Nome was running out of time to decide its fate. October 24th, 2024. 2 days before the alignment. Nome had become a town divided between those preparing to evacuate and those preparing to descend. The National Guard had arrived, setting up checkpoints at every known tunnel entrance, but it was like trying to hold back the tide with a screen door. People were walking through solid matter now, and the guardsmen's equipment kept malfunctioning near the golden light zones. I hadn't slept in 48 hours. I'd been coordinating with federal agents, tribal councils, and international scientists who'd descended on Nome like vultures on carrion. Everyone wanted to study the phenomenon, but no one wanted to admit what was really happening. Humanity was being offered an exit door from its own timeline. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, a quantum physicist from Tokyo, had been analyzing the harmonics the changed people were producing. She burst into the emergency command center we'd set up in the town hall, her face flushed with excitement and terror. "I've decoded it," she announced, connecting her laptop to the main screen. "The mathematical language they're speaking. It's not just coordinates, it's a complete historical record." The screen filled with data that made my head spin. Dates, locations, events, all stretching from 2024 to 2089. "This is our future," she said. "According to this, in 2014 too, a solar event will strip away most of Earth's atmosphere. By 2030, the surviving human population will be less than 1 million, living in underground shelters. By 2500, the sun begins its red giant phase earlier than predicted. By 2089, the last humans on Earth's surface die." The room was silent. Finally, someone asked, "So they came back to escape?" "No," Dr. Tanaka shook her head. "They came back to offer us escape. Look at this." She pulled up another data set. "They didn't just travel to our time. They traveled to every time where humanity faced extinction. The Black Death, the Toba eruption, the Younger Dryas. Each time they offered sanctuary to those willing to evolve beyond baseline humanity." "Then why aren't our histories full of these events?" the federal agent in charge demanded. "Because," I said, understanding finally dawning, "those who stay don't remember. Reality restructures itself to accommodate the loss. The missing become the never were." Dr. Tanaka nodded. "Exactly. It's a quantum editing of history. Those who leave exist in a parallel timeline. Those who stay continue in this one, with no memory of those who chose differently." Elder Martha Kiutaluk, who had been silently observing, spoke up. "This has happened before. Many times. My grandmother told stories of the missing year, 1892, when half our village vanished during an aurora storm. But the records show no such loss. The people who stayed remembered it differently within weeks." General Harrison, the military commander, stood up. "This is insane. We're talking about mass abduction, possibly hostile." "With respect, General," I interrupted, "nothing about this has been hostile. No one has been forced. Everyone who's gone has chosen to go. The question is, what happens to those who choose to stay?" That's when my father walked into the room. He shouldn't have been able to enter, it was a secured facility. But he walked through the checkpoint like it wasn't there, accompanied by 3 figures I recognized from historical photos. Jeremiah Walsh, the 1901 miner, Anna Tulik, who disappeared in 1962, and someone who made everyone gasp, Amelia Earhart. "Hello, James," my father said, his voice carrying harmonics of all four speakers. "We've come to show you something. Will you trust us?" Every gun in the room was drawn, but I raised my hand. "Stand down. Dad, what do you want to show us?" "The city. You need to see it to understand." The invitation isn't just about survival, it's about transformation, evolution, becoming something that can survive not just the death of Earth, but the heat death of the universe itself. Amelia Earhart stepped forward, and when she spoke, her voice was exactly as it sounded in old recordings, but with an underlying harmony that suggested vast depths. "I didn't crash in the Pacific," she said. "I found a soft spot in reality near Howland Island, a place where the golden light leaked through. I chose to land there, to explore. I've been living in the city for what you would call 87 years, but I've also lived for millennia. Time isn't a line there, it's an ocean, and we swim in all directions." General Harrison lowered his weapon slightly. "Prove it. Prove you're really Amelia Earhart." She smiled and recited details about her flight, about conversations with her navigator Fred Noonan that were never recorded, about classified aspects of her mission that only recently declassified documents had revealed. It was convincing enough that even the skeptics fell silent. "We're offering everyone in Nome the same choice I had," she continued. "Stay and face a difficult but human future, or evolve and face an eternal but transformed existence. Show us," I said. "Show us the city." They led us outside where a crowd had gathered. Without any visible effort, Jeremiah Walsh placed his hand on the ground. The concrete began to glow, then became transparent like glass. Below, impossible, far below what should have been there, we could see it. The city of the second sun. It was beautiful and terrible. Buildings that spiraled impossibly, defying geometry. Streets that flowed like rivers of light. Parks where trees grew in fractal patterns, their leaves shifting through colors that didn't exist in our spectrum. And in the center, a massive sphere of golden fire that burned without consuming, the second sun itself, casting light that seemed to flow backward, from future to past. But it was the people that truly disturbed me. Millions of them, maybe billions, all moving with purpose but also with that synchronized quality I'd seen in the Changed. They were human in shape but transformed. Some had skin, like living metal. Others seemed to phase in and out of visibility, and still others appeared to be made of living light. "This is what we become," my father said. "Not lost, but transformed. Not dead, but beyond death. We maintain our memories, our personalities, but we gain so much more. The ability to perceive time as a dimension we can navigate, the capacity to survive in any environment, the knowledge of a million civilizations that have made the same choice. At what cost?" Elder Martha asked. "The cost is change," Anna Tulik answered. "We can never be what we were. We can visit this timeline, interact with it, but we can never fully return to it. We become observers and guides, not participants. General Harrison had seen enough. Shut it down. Whatever this is, shut it down now. But you can't shut down a window into another reality by shouting at it." The vision remained, and more people gathered, drawn by the golden glow. I saw families reuniting with relatives who had vanished years ago. I saw children recognizing grandparents who had disappeared before they were born. The barrier between the two realities was becoming permeable. That's when the earthquake started. Not violent, but rhythmic, like a heartbeat. Every 12 seconds, the ground would pulse. Dr. Tanaka checked her instruments and went pale. The harmonics are building. The entire tectonic plate is resonating with the frequency of the second sun. If this continues, it won't just be Nome. The entire Arctic will become permeable. I made a decision that would haunt me forever, no matter which timeline I ended up in. We need to evacuate the children, I announced. Anyone under 18, out of Nome immediately. You can't make that choice for them, my father said, and for the first time since his return, he sounded like my actual father, not the harmonized collective. I'm not. I'm giving them more time to choose when they're old enough to understand. This isn't just about survival, it's about the fundamental nature of what it means to be human. The evacuation was chaos. Some parents wanted to leave with their children. Others wanted to stay but send their kids away. Still, others had already made the choice to descend and wanted their children to come with them. The National Guard tried to maintain order, but how do you maintain order when reality itself is becoming negotiable? As the buses loaded with children pulled away from Nome, heading for Anchorage, I saw something that broke my heart. Families literally torn between dimensions. One parent solid, one translucent, children caught between states of being. The choice wasn't clean. It never is. That night, October 25th, the aurora borealis didn't dance. It writhed, twisted, formed patterns that looked almost like writing across the sky. And beneath Nome, the golden glow had become so bright that you needed sunglasses even in the Arctic darkness. I found myself at the elementary school, standing at the spot where my grandfather's map indicated the main seal was. The building was empty, all the children evacuated. But the basement door, which had been welded shut since the school was built in 1971, was glowing around the edges. As I watched, the door began to open, not forced, not broken, just opening as if the welds meant nothing. Beyond was not a basement, but a grand staircase spiraling down into golden light. The entrance to the city. Standing at the top of the stairs was someone I didn't expect. Dr. Kaylee Otten from the hospital. But she wasn't alone. She was accompanied by someone who looked exactly like her, just younger, maybe from the 2030s, and another version that seemed ancient, possibly from the 2080s. "Hello, James," all three versions said in unison. "We wanted to show you something about choice." The younger version stepped forward. "In my timeline, I choose to descend during the 2047 alignment. I live in the city for what feels like centuries, gaining knowledge that helps me cure diseases that won't emerge for decades." The older version spoke next. "In my timeline, I never descend. I live through the catastrophes, help rebuild, and die naturally at 147 years old, one of the last natural humans." The current Dr. Otten, the one I knew, looked at me with tears in her eyes. "And I'm about to choose. But here's what you need to understand, James. All three of us exist. All three choices are real. The multiverse isn't just parallel worlds, it's parallel choices, all happening simultaneously." "Then why choose at all?" I asked. "Because," my father's voice came from behind me, "conscious choice collapses probability into reality. By choosing, we define which timeline we experience, even if all timelines exist." I turned to see not just my father, but dozens of versions of him. The one who went into the tunnels, the one who didn't, the one who became something beyond human, the one who died naturally. All real, all him. "The alignment isn't forcing a choice," he continued. "It's revealing that the choice has always existed. Every moment we choose which reality to experience. The alignment just makes it visible, undeniable." The ground shook again, stronger this time. In the distance, I could see the ocean beginning to glow. The effect was spreading beyond Nome, just as Dr. Tanaka had predicted. 24 hours, the collective voice of the Changed announced, echoing across the entire town. In 24 hours, the alignment peaks. The invitation expires. Choose consciously, or choice will be made by default. As I stood there, surrounded by multiple versions of people I knew, watching reality fracture and reform, I realized that my grandfather had been wrong about one thing. This wasn't the final year. This was just another cycle in an endless spiral of choices, each one creating new timelines, new possibilities, new versions of humanity. But he had been right about one thing. The choice had to be made with open eyes, and my eyes were finally, fully, terrifyingly open. October 26th, 2024, 11 p.m. 47 minutes until the perfect alignment. Nome had become unrecognizable. Half the buildings were translucent, existing simultaneously in our reality and the city below. The streets pulsed with golden veins of light. The aurora borealis had descended to ground level, green curtains of energy mixing with the golden glow from below, creating colors that human eyes weren't meant to process. Of the town's 3,800 residents, roughly half had already made their choice. Some descended through the spiral staircase in the elementary school. Others simply walked into walls and disappeared. Still others found their own soft spots in reality. A closet that opened onto golden streets, a car door that led to crystalline gardens, a mirror that reflected the city instead of their face. I stood in the command center, which now existed in 3 dimensions simultaneously. I could see the room as it would be in 2897, abandoned and frozen, and as it existed in the city below, a node of pure information where thoughts took physical form. General Harrison had given up trying to contain the situation. His soldiers were either deserting, descending, or simply standing in shock as their equipment phased in and out of existence. He sat, slumped in a chair, staring at his hands as they flickered between solid and translucent. "My daughter called from Anchorage," he said quietly. "The children we evacuated. They can see it too. The city. It's spreading through their dreams, their drawings. We didn't save them. We just delayed their choice." Dr. Tanaka was frantically taking readings, documenting everything. "This is unprecedented. The quantum signature suggests that reality itself is becoming fluid. Not just here, but globally. Every choice point in human history is becoming active simultaneously." Elder Martha sat calmly in the corner, braiding sweetgrass. "The world isn't ending," she said. "It's multiplying. Every possible future is becoming real. We just have to choose which one to live in." At 11:15, the final phase began. The ground didn't shake. It breathed, in and out, like colossal lungs. With each breath, more of the city below became visible. I could see the impossible architecture clearly now. Libraries that contained the thoughts of entire civilizations, gardens where extinct species thrived, museums displaying artifacts from futures that hadn't happened yet. And the people. I saw my grandfather, young and vital, working in what looked like a laboratory made of living light. I saw the missing hikers from the news, the pilots who vanished in the Bermuda Triangle, entire populations that history said died in disasters. All alive, all transformed, all part of something incomprehensibly vast. My radio, which shouldn't have worked given the electromagnetic interference, crackled to life. It was a voice I recognized but hadn't heard in years. My mother, who had died when I was 12. "James, my beautiful boy. I've been waiting for you. I chose to cross over when I was dying. The cancer couldn't follow me here. I've been watching you, all the versions of you, across all the timelines. I'm so proud of who you've become. I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. The others in the room turned away, giving me privacy for a moment that transcended the chaos around us. "Mom?" I whispered. "I'm here, baby. I'm always here. The city isn't death, James. It's what comes after death becomes obsolete. But it's also not life as you understand it. It's something else, something that requires letting go of everything you thought was fixed about reality. I don't know what to choose." "Then don't choose yet. You have 30 minutes. Walk through the town. See both realities. Then decide." The transmission ended. I stood up, looked at the others in the command center, some solid, some translucent, some existing in multiple states simultaneously, and walked out into the impossible night. Nome's Main Street was a river of light and shadow. People stood in clusters saying goodbye or hello, depending on their choice. I saw families splitting apart and others reuniting across decades of separation. At the harbor, fishing boats were sailing into the golden light and disappearing. Above, planes that had been trying to land were circling, their pilots reporting that the airport existed in 7 dimensions at once. I walked to the beach where Nome had been founded during the gold rush. The Bering Sea was glowing, and in its depths I could see the city extending impossibly far, not just under Nome, but under the entire ocean, connected to every place where reality was thin. That's where I found them. The 3 teenagers from the tunnel, David, Jennifer, and David. But they weren't teenagers anymore. They had aged and grown younger simultaneously, existing as every age they had ever been or would be. "Officer Tovak," they said, their voice a harmony of past, present, and future. "We wanted to thank you for trying to save us, for caring. I didn't save you. I couldn't. You gave us time to understand what was happening. That's all anyone can do. Give others time to choose consciously." Jennifer, or the part of her that was still Jennifer, stepped forward. "We've seen the future. All the futures. The timeline where humanity stays on Earth and struggles but survives. The timeline where we transcend but lose our humanity. And infinite variations between. Which is better?" I asked. "Neither. Both. The question isn't which is better. It's which feels true to who you are." David added, "In the city, you gain eternity but lose surprise. Everything that can happen has happened. You know every story's ending before it begins." David continued, "On Earth, you keep uncertainty, growth, the possibility of genuine change, but also suffering, death, the risk of extinction." At 11:35, the aurora and the golden light began to merge, creating a dome of impossible color over Nome. Through it, I could see other times, other versions of this moment. I saw myself choosing to descend in one timeline, staying in another, and in a third, finding a way to exist in both states permanently. My father appeared beside me, all versions of him consolidated into one figure for this final moment. "Son," he said, and his voice was just his voice. No harmonics, no collective consciousness. "Whatever you choose, I love you. Every version of you in every timeline. Dad, why did you come back? Why didn't you stay in the city?" He smiled sadly. "Because I wanted to see you make this choice, to be here for you in a way I wasn't when you were growing up. The city is perfect, James, but perfection doesn't allow for the beautiful imperfection of being a flawed father trying to do better." At 11:45, 2 minutes before the alignment, everyone still in Nome gathered in the town square. Those who had chosen to descend stood on one side, glowing with golden light. Those who had chosen to stay remained on the other, solid and casting shadows. And in the middle, a handful of us stood undecided. Elder Martha walked to the center and spoke in Inupiaq, then English. For thousands of years, our people have survived in the harshest place on earth. We did it by adapting, by changing, but also by remembering who we are. Tonight, some of us will adapt in the ultimate way, becoming something beyond human. Others will remain, carrying the memory of what humanity was and could be. Both choices honor our ancestors. Both choices shape our descendants. She pulled out a drum and began to beat it in rhythm with the pulsing lights. Others joined in, drums, voices, even the changed ones humming in harmonics that turned the song into something that existed in all dimensions simultaneously. At 11:46, I made my choice. But here's the thing about choices in a multiverse. I made all of them. In one timeline, I descended, joining my mother and grandfather in the Eternal City. In another, I stayed, becoming the keeper of Nome's history, the one who remembered when half the town chose transcendence. In a third, I found a way to exist in quantum superposition, spending half my time in each reality, forever bridging the gap between human and post-human. You're probably wondering which choice you're hearing about now. Which version of James Tovak is telling this story? The answer is all of them. Because at 11:47 p.m. Alaska Standard Time, October 26, 2024, reality didn't choose one path. It chose all paths. The multiverse didn't collapse into a single timeline. It became visible, accessible, navigable. Nome still exists in your timeline, the one where this is just a story, a creepy tale from the Arctic. The evacuated children grew up, some forgetting the golden light they saw, others spending their lives trying to find it again. The government classified everything, created cover stories about gas leaks and mass hallucinations. Within a year, even the people who stayed started to forget the specific details, reality editing itself to maintain causality. But Nome also exists in the timeline where everyone descended, where the city of the second sun rose to the surface, transforming Earth into something unrecognizable but magnificent, and it exists in countless variations between these extremes. The Inupiat still tell stories about the Chimik, the light that burns cold. Scientists still detect strange radiation signatures beneath the permafrost. And every aurora season, when the green lights dance above and the golden glow seeps from below, people disappear. 3 to 4, like clockwork. Always by choice. Always walking toward something that promises transformation at the cost of everything they've known. As for me, this version of me, the one whose words you're reading, I'm still here in Nome, still a tribal police officer, still watching for the lights. But I'm different now. I can see the other timelines, the other choices, like shadows at the edge of my vision. I know that somewhere, another version of me is exploring the impossible architecture of the underground city. Another is explaining to his grandchildren why half their family exists in another dimension. Another is working with scientists to build a permanent bridge between the realities. The children we evacuated ask me sometimes if it really happened. I tell them the truth. It happened, it's happening, it will happen. The choice is always there, waiting for the next alignment, the next moment when the boundaries wear thin. Because that's what I learned that night. The second sun isn't just a phenomenon that happens in Nome during aurora season. It's a constant invitation, a door that's always slightly open for those who know how to look. Every moment of every day, in every place where reality is thin, the choice exists. Stay in the known world with all its limitations and possibilities, or step into the unknown and become something else entirely. The elders were right to forbid patrols during aurora season, not because of the danger, but because of the temptation. Every officer who sees both lights has to make the choice. And once you've seen the city of the second sun, once you've felt the warmth of a star that burns backward through time, once you've heard the voices of everyone who ever chose transcendence calling you to join them, well, staying human becomes the hardest choice of all, but also the most valuable, because someone needs to remember, someone needs to witness, someone needs to remain fully human to appreciate what it means to transcend humanity. So I patrol, I watch, I document. And every aurora season, when the lights dance above and below, when my radio fills with reports of missing persons who walked into tunnels and never came back, I remember that night in October when reality offered everyone in Nome the ultimate choice. And I know that someday, maybe sooner than we think, that choice will be offered to everyone on Earth. The future reaching back to save itself, or to transform itself, or simply to offer an alternative to the path we're on. When that day comes, remember Nome. Remember that the invitation isn't a threat or a salvation. It's just a choice between remaining beautifully, tragically, hopefully human, or becoming something else entirely. The second sun is still burning beneath the permafrost, still calling, still waiting, and somewhere in another timeline another version of me has already answered. If you're ever in Nome during aurora season and you see the golden light rising from the ground, know that you're seeing the same choice that faced humanity at every crucial junction of its existence: evolve or remain, transcend or persist, change or preserve. Just remember, whatever you choose, you're choosing for all versions of yourself across all timelines. And in a multiverse where every choice creates reality, the only wrong choice is the one made without understanding. The Inupiat knew this long before the miners came, long before the city was discovered, long before time started folding back on itself. They knew that some lights shouldn't be followed, some doors shouldn't be opened, and some choices shouldn't be made lightly. But they also knew that eventually, every door opens. Every light must be faced. Every choice must be made. Welcome to Nome, Alaska, where the aurora comes from above, the second sun rises from below, and humanity's future is always 47 minutes away from changing forever.